It's bright and early right here on Channels Television and in Lagos, which is our global headquarters. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. It's called The Morning Brief. I'm Jeffrey Uzango.
Yeah, rise and shine, Nigeria. Good morning and welcome to the perfect day starter on Channels Television. I am Bukola Koka. Welcome.
The responsibility, as always, has not changed. It will never change. It's just to be unfolding and bringing up different things that are unfolding every other day. And that is quite simple, looking at the polity and bringing major highlights to the fore, from the economy to security to all the things you would like to have us discuss with our experts or policymakers on the program. Bukola, what's going on? Quite
a lot, Jeffrey, from Rivers State.
Rivers again.
Rivers of troubled waters.
Rivers need to be a series on one of the streaming platforms. It's a series, literally.
And it's interesting to note the governor's position, but of course we're going to delve into that matter. And what is even more interesting, well, not interesting, a bit worrying, is that appointment made by Mr. President yesterday of an acting chief of army staff because of the illness of the substantive chief of army staff, who is currently indisposed. And, you know, our prayers are with him at this time, and we hope that he returns to work very, very soon.
Well, you know, initially it was reported that he was indisposed. The army came, denied it. That, in fact, they even made a statement saying that there's no position such as the acting chief of army staff, something like that. But eventually, we've now seen what played out. And as Bukola has said, our thoughts and our prayers for his quick recovery. I'm talking about Lieutenant General Lagbaja, who is the chief of army staff. But there's an acting chief of army staff who has taken over the reins of authority to lead the army pending the return. That's the statement from Bayo Nanuga, the spokesperson of the president. There's going to be an acting capacity until the return of Mr. General Lagbaja. At the end of the day, it's important. One of the things I was thinking about when it came to this issue is that, look, we're all human beings. We're prone to human frailties and proclivity. Nobody goes to the market to auction to buy ill health. In fact, all of us want to live in good health. It's a prayer we pray every birthday, every day we wake up in the morning and all of that. But sometimes when I look at Nigeria, especially people in authority, when they are sick, it becomes a lot of issue as to what exactly is wrong with them or whether they're even sick at all. I know it happened with the president till today. Whatever the president is dealing with in terms of health, we don't know. And, you know, so that's just the way it happens here in Nigeria, and I don't know why. If someone is ill, the person is ill. The structure is quite clear on who should run things if the person is indisposed. But we're happy this has finally come out, and for a fact, the man is not feeling well. He's abroad taking treatment, so that somebody now has taken charge of his responsibility in acting capacity. So whether the president is not feeling well or a governor is not feeling well, I think it's only fair to say the president or the governor is not feeling well. You may not disclose to us what it is, the illness, probably because of confidentiality, as it were. But making a mystery out of ill health. In America, as soon as a president gets sick, we know the problem, what is wrong with the person. In fact, sometimes even know the hospital is being treated. But here, everything is in secrecy, and I don't know why.
And, you know, once a public official takes office, your responsibility is no longer to yourself alone, particularly if you lead a nation as challenging as Nigeria. Any nation at that, you owe your people a duty to be accountable as far as whatever the nature of your ill health is. And that's the duty of all officials, elected and appointed. Ill health ceases to become a thing of secrecy or a mystery. So it's high time we moved past that period in our national life where the nature of ill health of any official becomes a matter of secrecy, such that it's guarded closely by aides of the office who insist on the privacy of an appointed official or an elected official whose service is to the people, saying that they cannot disclose what the nature of the ill health is. At that level, things have completely changed, because if anything happens to any official who holds such a responsibility with magnitude, it impacts on the well-being of the generality of the people. So we hope that, we assume a higher level of maturity in these things, Jeffrey.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we just pray for his return and, better health, at least for himself and his family. Everybody's human. We all fall sick once in a while. But you know what? I was smiling and laughing is because I have learned on this job and as an adult that I've concluded, this is my thoughts, it may not change anytime soon, that the way politicians process, now this has nothing to do with Lagbaja, the chief of army staff that is not feeling well, but just piggyback on that. The fact that politicians process things differently, Bukola, from the way we process. You see,
we can't say that enough.
Yes. You see, we're processing it like fairly, objectively. What is the big
Hopefully
deal?
Justly.
The politician is thinking, if I disclose now, what will my distractors do? How are they going to take advantage of it? In fact, this is my deputy. I don't even trust him too. I may leave now, and before I know, the more I look, the less I see.
A campaign issue.
Come on, man, let's get out of it. The world this is 2024.
Maybe they'll go to court with it.
I'm telling you, they'll hold it.
And argue on disqualification. It's interesting to explore the mind of a typical politician.
No, look, there are Nigerians, there are human beings, and then there are politicians. Okay, let's tell you what we're doing today on the program. Well, Bukola says bumper package. Is a word I don't like to use at all. So we're going to be talking the issue of national security, from vandalizing national electricity assets and hindering repair works to restore power to northern Nigeria. Terrorists have again set up an affront against the sovereignty of the Nigerian state. Today we examine this incident and report about a takeover of a military training camp by bandits, but that has been denied by the military. Our experts team, they'll be joining us to dissect all of this issue right here on the program this morning. And
from national security, we move on to the rivers of many troubled waters. Is there ever going to be an end to the river's political crisis? It's one day, one trouble. And the latest being a court order stopping the Central Bank of Nigeria from crediting the account of the state over issues around the budget presented to a House of 4 at the peak of the crisis. That also forms part of our discussion today.
It's interesting, the epic Rivers series. Always. Well, from there we go to the lighter side of things. Nigeria has selected the epic Hausa film Mai'Martaba as its contender for the International Film Festival category at the 97th Academy Awards. The film explores power, love, greed, and betrayal, themes in an ancient African kingdom. The producer and director, Prince Daniel, will join us on the program to tell us about this particular movie. You don't want to miss it. I can't wait, Bukola, to see
a Nigerian film for the Oscars. That has always been your dream, Jeffrey.
Oh,
and it's happening.
I know that there's always the argument of seeking foreign validation. Must we win the Oscar or the Grammy? But it is what it is right now. So we have our people in those committees or subcommittees that will do this selection. So let's see how far Mai'Martaba will go. But it tells you that our creative industry, for me, they built from ground zero. They built despite of government support. They just decided, look, we can't keep looking at these guys. Let's do what we have to do. And we're seeing some of this progress recorded. So the producer and the director of the movie will be joining us on set, on via Zoom, whichever, to have this conversation on what this movie is all about and whether we should be very hopeful to see how far Mai'Martaba will go at the Oscars. Well,
I'm interested in knowing just what it is about this movie that makes it qualify for an international feature film. And, the uniqueness of the movie is such that it's also a story, domiciled in Nigeria's north. So it hasn't been released yet, but of course we'll delve into all of the perspectives that will shape the conversation about this feature film that qualifies for the Oscars.
But don't forget, it's your show. So X is the portal of choice for us on social media. CTV Morning Brief. How much are you buying fuel? What is going on? Have you converted your car or your vehicle to CNG? What exactly is going on in that space? That is a conversation Nigerians have every other day, and they're just wondering, when will this be over? How much did you get $1 for in the last
Jeffrey, as we say in local parlance, truly. That is part of the... That is a major talking point right now.
Need an award. And we apologize to you citizens. We as citizens, we've tried. It's our leaders that are reckless. And we hope that this leadership will not follow through some of the things we've seen in past leadership. But Nigerians are already angry with the leadership for making things really hard. They say we should bear for how long we do not know. Bukola was saying the other day, it's about what happens when they say fake. Nigerians were living fake life with the removal of PMS and subsidy and not defending the Naira. It used to piss me off because it feels like, look, our parents messed up our resources and you're telling us as children to take responsibility.
It's totally disconnected from reality.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, during the last administration, things had really hit rock bottom. And, you know, to think that we'll find ourselves where we currently are today, where Nigerians are buying... No, let's paint a picture. Purchasing petrol with more than 50% of their income. And for some, their income is even unable to afford petrol at the rate that it currently is. People are struggling to eat. And, you know, some people would argue that we're living a fake life.
No, I don't like that word fake life. It's a piss off to me. Your parents cannot be reckless with the responsibilities you give them and blame it on the children. So I don't like that word at all. It is the leadership that has failed us time and again. So let's see what this leadership brings to the table. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be bringing you your top stories, tracking some of the big stories we've been looking at on the news. And afterwards, we'll talk to you on the monitor to amplify your voice or what you're saying on our social media of choice, which is X. Join us again. Top on the brief this morning is the appointment of Major General Olufemi Olatubosun Oluyede as the acting chief of Army Staff. Major General Oluyede will hold the position pending the return of the substantive chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagbaja, who is said to be indisposed and is receiving treatment abroad. In a statement by presidential spokesman Bayo Nanuga, until his appointment, Major General Oluyede served as the 56th commander of the Elite Infantry Corps of the Nigerian Army base in Jaji, Kaduna State. The 56-year-old and Lagbaja were course mates and members of the 39th Regular Corps. Recall that the Nigerian Army had in a statement signed by the Director of Defense Information last week, Brigadier General Toko Gusau, dismissed reports suggesting that there was a leadership vacuum following the absence of the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagbaja. Meanwhile, it was a busy day at the Red Chambers of the National Assembly, who suspended its rules to admit and screen ministerial nominees who took turns to respond to questions based on their attached portfolio on what they will bring to the table. The Senate afterwards confirmed the appointment of all 7 ministerial nominees of the President, that's President Bola Tinubu, submitted to the upper legislative chamber for accelerated consideration. Mr. Mentawa Yewata, Ambassador Bianca Odumego Ojukwu, Maigari Dingiadi, Jumoke Oduwole, Idi Maiha Yusuf Atta, and Ames Awad all answered questions satisfactory to the senators, who subsequently confirmed their appointments. And now to that never-ending political intrigue in Rivers State, where Justice Joyce Abdul-Malik of the Federal High Court, Abuja, has stopped the Central Bank of Nigeria from further releasing monthly financial allocation to the Rivers State government. Justice Abdul-Malik held that the receipt and disbursement of the monthly allocation since January this year by the Rivers State government was a breach of the Constitution and an aberration and must not be allowed to continue following the presentation of the 2024 budget by the Fubara-led administration before a 4-member Rivers State House of Assembly. The judge subsequently restrained the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Accountant General of the Federation, Zenith Bank and Access Bank from further allowing Fubara, that's the governor, to access money from the Consolidated Revenue and Federation accounts. In a swift response, Governor Siminalayi Fubara says concerns over the Federal High Court decision that restricted the release of the state allocation is the least of his problems. Speaking during a special Thanksgiving service organized by the state government to celebrate its administration's resilience and escalating political crisis, which began with the arson attack on the State Assembly complex exactly a year ago, he assured indigents that despite the court order, his administration will continue to pay contractors and ensure workers' salaries are disbursed. He also confirmed that the allocations for the 23 local government chairmen will be credited as the Joint Accounts Allocation Committee procedure have all been completed.
We have journeyed so far. We have taken the most difficult part of this struggle. There is nothing that is happening now that is not surmountable. I want you to know that. So you need to praise up and be strong. Nothing has happened. We're still complete. We're still intact. Let me tell you, they said we're not going to last for 1 week. We're here. We have done 1 year plus. We're also doing 1 year anniversary of the attempt. Today, we have the local government chairman sitting with us.
And more stories now. A motion urging the president to rescind the decision described the Niger Delta ministry has been stepped down in the House of Representatives. The motion, sponsored by Honorable Boko Foji from Bayelsa State, drew the attention of the lawmakers to the purpose for the setting up of the Niger Delta ministry to address concerns in the Niger Delta and supervise this commission. The president last week, during a cabinet reshuffle, scrapped the Ministry of the Niger Delta Affairs to establish the Ministry of Regional Development that will oversee regional interventionist agencies, a move that received mixed reaction from the region and its stakeholders.
The region is disturbed that on the 23rd of October 2024, the oil-rich region witnessed a palpable tension following the announcement of the scrapping of the Ministry of Niger Delta Development by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. This is not a good omen for a region that has contributed immensely to the economic development of our country and has enjoyed some relative peace. The House resolved urged the federal government, led by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to urgently rescind the scrapping of the Ministry of the Niger Delta.
He told me clearly that he is favorably disposed to receiving any proposal concerning the establishment of South-South Development Commission. So I think in light of this explanation, I would want to call on the sponsor of this motion to please allow us to step down this motion.
And away from the National Assembly, to other stories, the Independent Broadcasting Association of Nigeria, IBAN, has inaugurated its new board of trustees and executive council members during its annual general meeting held at the Global Headquarters of Channels Television. The chairman of Channels Media Group, Dr. John Mama, was sworn in as the chairman of the board of trustees, joined by Dr. Ahmed Tijani Ramalan, Lemi Olalemi, and Tony Dara as fellow board members. During his opening remarks, IBAN chairman Dr. Ahmed Ramalan said the future of Nigeria's media industry hinges on stakeholders' ability to collaborate effectively. Conversations around Nigeria's failing digital switch-over and solution to the negative perception form part of the deliberations at the inaugural annual general meeting.
Today's viewers have unprecedented choices at their fingertips, and traditional broadcasting models must adapt to keep pace with this shifting landscape. One other crucial area we must address is the NBC Code. This almighty code. Currently, it imposes several restrictions that hinder our ability to operate competitively and flexibly. We call upon the National Broadcasting Commission. We call upon the DG, who is graciously here today, to engage with us and develop a more friendly broadcasting code, one that aligns with international regulatory standards and acknowledges the unique needs of Nigerian broadcasters. A code that is transparent, supportive, and forward-thinking will empower us to innovate, to grow, and to contribute to Nigeria's media landscape.
IBAN will articulate the potentials of the Nigerian broadcast industry to foster strategic partnership. The new IBAN believes that media industry should use the current difficult situation faced by the broadcast industry as an opportunity to correct our business operational models.
From my calculation, I know that so far about 53 billion naira has been committed to the DSO by the government of Nigeria. Now, we can't say there's transparency in how the DSO has been managed so far. You know, sadly, as we speak, 2 of my former bosses are standing trial over DSO money. Yes. They are still standing trial since 2015. And I've been to EFCC, invited severally, and ICPC. This is your DSO. This money, who took who did this? Fortunately, yeah, my signature is not on any of them. IBAN, I think again, it is time to take ownership of the DSO. For me, you are the apparent owners and major investors and stakeholders in this project.
Congratulations to the leadership of IBAN. So let's now talk business. The National Insurance Commission has sacked the board and management of the African Alliance Insurance Company. Then announcing the development in the statement, the commission says it has taken over the board and management of the company and appointed an interim management board to manage the affairs of the African Alliance Insurance Company. The regulator stated that the interim management board will oversee the company's operations, ensure compliance with regulatory requirements, and implement necessary reforms. That's according to the statement. To other stories now on the international scene. On the international scene, Spanish rescuers scramble to save people trapped by surging tides of muddy water in floods that have killed at least 64 people in the country's east. The country's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, urged citizens to remain vigilant as the danger persisted and also declared 3 days of mourning. Heavy rain and fierce winds have plagued the country since the beginning of the week after a storm formed over the Mediterranean Sea, triggering floods in the eastern Valencia and southern Andalusia regions. And now to sports news, where fourth-seeded Daniil Medvedev lost to Alexei Popyrin 6-4, 2-6, 7-4 in the second round of the Paris Masters in a tense roller coaster match. The 25-year-old Australian player who won his first Masters 1000 title in Montreal this summer had lost 3 previous matches against the Russian rival. Both men combined for a total of 86 unforced errors under the roof of Palace Omnisports. Well, those are the stories we've been tracking for you, say, in the last 24 hours and the earlier part of the day. Let's now get to the social media, our social media of choice, which is X, to bring you up to speed with what you've been saying. Bukola joins me now to let us know what we are talking about on social media. Bukola.
Yes, indeed, Jeffrey. Nigerians are talking about quite a lot, from the court judgment stopping the CBN from further releasing allocation to Rivers State to the Senate passing the Nigerian tax bill. Those are the things that Nigerians are talking about. And the shades of opinion are as varied as our ethnicity in this country. We look forward, as a result, to these things, to that time where we'll think of ourselves more as Nigerians than where we are from, first of all. But let's start this morning with that court order that came through from yesterday, of course, which will also form our talking point shortly. Uche Okoro is the first user this morning, and he says the court's decision to halt allocations to Rivers State is a troubling precedent. It sets a dangerous standard where the judiciary can control state finances at its whim. This undermines the balance of power and could lead to political instability.
All right, so the next is Mr. Caesar. I guess that's how your unique way of spelling Caesar. Let's get to see what you say. This will get to the point where they say no crude should leave Port Harcourt. Then we'll have Niger Delta militancy all over again, not going to be nice
at this point.
Okay.
Well, Ojo, and we hope it doesn't get to that point, really.
Absolutely.
Ojo Adisa says all these things, I believe, will not bring progress to the state. They should resolve the internal crisis and think of the betterment of the people.
All right, anti-corrupt, that's how you call, that's your name, anti-corrupt. You said Fubara should take the matter of defection to court rather than disobeying court orders. Rivers Fund is in safe hands. Let him pursue the case of defective candidate. What is that? What is that?
Well, I guess they're trying to talk about the assembly lawmakers that defected.
Okay.
But it seems like they're back in the party now.
We're not sure where they are.
We're not sure where they are, right?
So Rivers State is a movie. The governor is PDP. He used the SPV of APP to take charge of the local government. We're not sure whether the guys are, at least they defected, so we can say they are APC. Sitting with PDP or PDP sitting with APC. And even the APC in the state, we're not sure where the APC lies. There's the Beke faction that seemed to tilt towards the governor's side. Then there is the Okocha end that was removed by the court. That is pro-Wike. Come on, guys. You're confusing us. Just choose it.
Let's make progress, Jeffrey. This next talking point is about the Nigerian Senate passing the Nigeria Tax Reform Bill for the first reading. And Muna Moss says the idea behind this bill is to wake sleepy governors who only believe in federal monthly allocation without improving the state IGR. Well, it's quite difficult to disagree with Muna Moss this morning.
But that's why the northern governors are resisting. But I also saw a story yesterday that showed that when we look at the record of last year, some states, I think Imo was mentioned, I remember Imo and two other states, that the IGR they generated in 2024 budget, the monies that will be spent in the governor's office is more than the entire IGR of last year. Interesting. Keep that to your mind. I saw it as satisfying. Okay, Zubair says, we will not accept speedy passage without the necessary amendment concerning the issue of VAT. Of course, there will be first reading, second reading, public hearing, before third reading, so all of that will be fine-tuned, I guess.
Usman says, can a nation's economy be improved by taxation and expensive lifestyle of leaders without production? It's an age-long question, I believe.
Big question. All right, Bakat Sin. I hope that I pronounced your name correctly. If I didn't, I apologize. So, good policy, the northern states should wake up, creating an enabling environment for domestic and foreign companies to generate their own VAT. The north is a fertile land for investment. So for the record, I saw a receipt of 1962 where our exports and imports were captured. So things like groundnut, cocoa, palm oil, and one other product all earned us more FX than even petroleum product. I mean crude oil. So where did you lose it? So the next one is power is restored in northern Nigeria. So good news. It's been a big issue. Vandals have done their things, terrorists have done theirs, but it appears the Minister of Power swung to action to stay true to their word. The president has said, whatever you need to do to get power back to the north. It's been there for days, they've not had power, so get it back. So these are your responses. Kankafo says, now what happens if some of the northerners go back again and vandalize it? Another outage? We need to be proactive. Not northerners, so it's not northerners. Anybody who vandalizes is a criminal.
He's a vandal, he's a criminal.
So it's not a tribal thing. Criminals vandalize, not a tribe. We need to be proactive and ensure this does not repeat itself. All northern governors, traditional rulers, leaders, military, NSA, and the FG must find better proactive plans.
And Olasukomi says, this is great news. Root cause known, gap identified, learning should be taken while area of improvement can be implemented without further delay. Economic losses not too good for the country at this moment. Economic losses is key. So speaking of which, how much was lost during that 1 week of power outage in the
Over
north?
a week, actually.
Over a week.
The responder says the northern governors should educate their people on how to safeguard the electricity transmission lines in the north. Because I think do we have time for the last one? Maybe we take two of the last. That has to do with the appointment of an acting chief of army staff. Behola says, I wish him well and the substantive requires quick recuperation.
Yeah, and Dr. E says, no smoke without fire. Well, sometimes we need to be more sensitive about the kinds of comments that we put through, particularly when they have to do with issues
health.
Like this one. Ill health, even death. So let's be more compassionate. So we'll take a short break now.
Absolutely.
When we return, our first port of call this morning would be the concern over security of critical national assets. Yes, indeed, power has been restored to the north, but some of your questions this morning are quite important. How did the vandals access our transmission lines in the first place? We'll be asking those questions with a view to ensuring or preferring suggestions that they do not reoccur. So join us for that important conversation right after this time out. We'll be back.
the bandits are also threatening the contractors that we sent to fix it, which is why we sought help of the NSA and the other security agencies. So, with due respect to the Senator, the northern blackout was not due to technical grid collapse. It was vandalization. And we have explored alternative routes of supply power, which is the Bauchi route, which was also vandalized anyway, but that one is easier to fix. And we are saying within the next 2 to 3 days, there will be light restored to the north.
Troubling revelations made there by the Minister of Power, Mr. Adebayo Adelabu, and even though power has been restored to many parts of the north now, the worrying question is, how will this be prevented from happening again, such that economic activities and indeed, the simplest aspect of national life is not disrupted yet again in the north? And joining us to have this conversation this morning, we have very distinguished gentlemen, 2 of them joining us from our Abuja studio. We have this morning Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, 2 joining us in our Lagos studio. I beg your pardon. Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, a security expert who joins us here in Lagos. We also have Mr. Dixon Osaji, is also a security consultant who joins us here in Lagos. And joining us from our Abuja studio, we have former Commissioner of Police, Mr. Emmanuel Ojukwu, retired, who joins us from our Abuja studio. I'll start here in Lagos. Mr. Adekoya, I'll start with you. Is this another approach? We know the usual approach of insurgents. They go after soft targets, the locals. In fact, reports are to the effect that they, try to gain the trust of the locals through recruitment and even paying them, some form of money. Sometimes they obtain taxes from them. But this is another approach. And how worrying is this for you?
Good morning to the viewers. This is nothing new, really. Again, I'm always surprised when Nigerians are surprised because we don't look at the data. There's been a couple of attacks on transmission lines, even into the FCT. I think in the last 10 years it's happened. A place like the Northeast is their everyday experience. If you look at Maiduguri as a garrison town now, Borno State, as a matter of fact, completely disconnected from the grid. And they've been in that situation, if I'm not mistaken, in the last 6 years. So what Maiduguri has tried to do is to have an IPP and a gas-powered plant within Maiduguri itself, and then they truck gas into Maiduguri. So I don't think the minister has said this is a new revelation. I would be surprised if that's what he's saying. 1, 2, I would also be surprised if they've not taken cognizance of this risk. These matters have been there. So the thing is, what is the program? I heard him mention the NSA. Yes, the NSA coordinates. Again, we overflog the office of the NSA. The NSA is not everybody's lap dog, as it were, with profound respect. The NSA is to coordinate the intelligence agencies. So yes, if he's referring to the NSA to provide intelligence and also maybe put more focus on those communities, because these issues happen within the communities. These things are done by Nigerians, not by outsiders. The same program you put in place to protect pipelines are the same programs you put in place to protect these critical national assets. So there's a way to do the protection. It's not hard, but it's just attention and resources. So we don't know if the right program is in place, if the security department of the TCN have the required resources to do their job. Because along the lines where these power transmission cables are running, they run through communities. There are community people involved in this. So you just follow the right of way of the lines and then know where this is happening frequently. And then you address it. And then you know the outer area. So, like I said, I'm surprised that Nigerians are surprised. But I'm not surprised, because this has been happening for the last 10 years, repeatedly in different parts of the north central, northeast, sometimes in the northwest. So it's not new.
You're right, Mr. Adekoya, because there are some reports that quoting locals to say that the vandals have actually been attacking the Shiroro Kaduna transmission lines for a long time.
Yes.
So, Mr. Osagie, how do they even access? These are critical national assets. How do they even take possession of it in the first place, to the extent that officials who are supposed to work on those power lines are unable to access them without the aid of other security operatives?
Well, fantastic question. That is the absence of a capable guardian, you know. In every given situation, I think things should be put in place. We're talking about critical infrastructure here. And when you want to talk about protecting critical infrastructure, you first of all put the the Nigerian people in mind, you know, understanding the fact that this critical infrastructure contributes to our national development. And first of all, we need to also understand the objectives of most of these terrorist groups. Why are they targeting most of this critical infrastructure? You know, they want to get global recognition, which they are getting. They want to have publicity, which they are getting, because publicity makes them strive. Publicity gives them energy. These guys breathe evil. They live evil. They dream evil. They eat evil. They sleep evil. So if these guys are not well, you know, curtailed, they will keep on attacking our critical infrastructure. Just like I just said, security is doable. You know, it's just that it's so sad that our reputational capital as a country has been damaged and has been brutalized for so long by this unnecessary human being classified as a bandit or whatever. But I see them as terrorists. The Senate Vice President yesterday, you know, attest to the fact that, yes, we are yet as a country to live with terrorists. He has accepted that we are living with terrorist group in our nation, in our territorial space, whereby the people of Nigeria that were supposed to be taken care of by the Constitution of the Republic of Nigeria are being abused, brutalized by these terrorist groups. So these guys, they live with us, they have captured our assets, and we need not give them the breathing space. We need to go after these guys with speed and momentum, go after their sponsors as well, because I saw the Minister of Power yesterday, he's been worried, you know, the transmission company, we have the generation company, we have the transmission company, and we have the distribution company. But I want to appreciate the TCN response to, you know, this restoring electricity within the northern region. It's a disturbing development for our national security.
Indeed, it is. Mr. Juku, let's come to you now. The minister said even the Bauchi-Makurdi transmission line was also attacked, but he acknowledged that it was easier to repair. You are a retired commissioner of police. Give us a sense of what is usually the security, the kind of security formation around those assets, and how it may have been breached.
Okay, thank you for having me. First is that I'm happy that the lines have been restored in some parts, and, but there's no guarantee that those communities will have lights, say, in the next 3 days or thereafter, because those facilities can also be vandalized again and again. What I think, what has been the situation has been that the police and other security agencies, particularly the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, have been working in sync to protect those trophy institutions. But I think we need to go a step further, apart from the security agencies working along that line. Those responsible, this TCN or whoever generates and transmits electricity, ought to do a stakeholder mapping and then stakeholder engagement. Who are the stakeholders in electricity distribution chain? Who are the consumers? They know them. Need to segment them, engage them. Every Nigerian who lives along that line depends one way or the other on this electricity. It's a stakeholder. We need to engage these stakeholders and let them have an understanding. At any time a bolt or a knot is removed from a transmission line, it poses grave danger to farmers, poses great danger to the agricultural food chain, it poses danger to hunters, it poses danger to the communities around. They could spark fire. These wires may collapse, these towers may collapse, and bring about fire. Nobody likes all these things. So they need to be put on notice, they need to mobilize to help the government to police these institutions. Now, when these bolts and nuts are removed or the wires are cut, there are receivers. So that stakeholder mapping will show us who are the benefactors, who are those triggering this issue, who are those sponsoring these boys to do all that, and then who are the end users, who are the receivers of these stolen items. By the time we're able to get all of these, we'll be able to break the chain, the link between the benefactor and the beneficiary, the thief, and then the receiver of stolen property. It has to be a community arrangement, not just for the police or other agencies. All hands have to be on deck, because when it happens, everybody smells it, everybody suffers. So everybody must be involved in securing our infrastructure. Apart from that, there could be technical aid to put a surveillance on this infrastructure. I'm sure they can devise that, and I'm sure they do exist elsewhere in the world, and Nigeria has got the capacity to look into that.
Let me bring it back to you, Mr. Adekoya. He is talking about some level of collaboration. Mr. Sajay talks about, if I quote him correctly, maybe brute force. Where do you stand on this? Because these guys, the way where I sit, I see them is an affront on our national sovereignty.
Yes.
So what approach is best for you?
For me, it's not a national problem. Again, we thank God that the laws have been reworked to allow state governments, I like to come back to state governments, to be able to generate their own power and distribute it locally. So we need to go there very quickly. You can't have lines running that far across very austere parts and there's nobody monitoring it. So that's on the one hand for the future. The second part is that this is the problem of the TCN, not of Nigerians, as it were. There's a company called the Transmission Company of Nigeria. If you look at the oil and gas, let's also mirror, because it's almost the same thing. You have these lines, you have the right of way running. We have local operators within the oil and gas space who are able to move and have about 96%, 97% uptime in their pipelines. And what they do is what the CP said. You do your stakeholder mapping. You know where your lines are passing through, and you manage the communities along those lines. There's some incentivization they have to provide. There is some layering of force that has to be provided also, because if you have a program, you don't have enforcement, you have nothing. So for me, this is a failure on the part of the TCN. We should be hearing from the CEO or the head of the TCN. It's a TCN failure. They collect money for transmission, part of which they also do is to guarantee the discos, that distribution. I know they may have different clauses to also excuse them from force majeure, some of these things, but if you run a company like the TCN, at the heart of your operation is security. So what's the enterprise security risk program of the TCN? At the TCN, do you have a director of security? What is his team like? What program are they running? What resources do they have? Because TCN goes across the country. So who are the subheads? Who is managing what? Whose area is failing? What is the risk assessment done across the lines in the last, say, 1 year? What were the recommendations made? Is anybody following those recommendations? So we can cry bandits all we want, but there's a company responsible, and that company should come and answer. That's where I stand, because there are companies in Nigeria that are able to. Again, let me reference the oil and gas. The presidency has said, listen, every operator, IOC or local, we must up production. So what everybody is doing in that sector is going back to looking at their system, to seeing what is working, what is not working, what can be improved upon, because we want to ramp up production. The same thing in the power sector. Nobody's interested in all this. We've seen in Nigeria where pipelines are sabotaged because, turnaround maintenance is an industry on its own. The president should give a matching order. All we want is to up transmission, we want to up generation, we want Nigerians to receive more power.
Mr.
That company must do its job.
But pardon me, are you saying that the TCN should be responsible for security around the national assets and should guarantee it as well?
Absolutely. That's why it's the TCN. The TCN would have a security department. If they don't have, that's a big problem. You see, what the CP was talking about, stakeholder mapping, that's the very basic thing any company with a national outlook does. When your network or whatever your operation crisscrosses different parts. Nigeria has over 774 local governments. So you need to know where your key risk is. You need to grade your security operating level to say, at this region, I'm at level 4, at this region, I'm at level 2, at level 4, I'm grading from 1 to 5. If 4 being high risk, 5 being extreme risk. So when you grade, you know where you should be paying attention to and what resources should be going into those communities to manage the stakeholders to, I mean, we talk about asset owners sometimes in the oil and gas space. You see, these attacks on the lines have been repeated.
All right, yeah. Mr. Adeka, let me take you to Mr. Saja. I like to go back to promises politicians make, because that's the only way I can hold them accountable.
Political promises, yeah.
The 80-page mandate or the manifesto of the president, under security, we have what they call secure critical national infrastructure. I want to read a line where they talked about how to protect all of this. Integral to this effort shall be the deployment of modern technologies, tools, and equipment to end crude oil theft, prevent vandalization of national assets, and reduce to the barest minimum environmental pollution to Niger Delta and all of that. So we can hold the president accountable. I know that he wants to excuse the government to an extent.
In no way excusing the government.
No, I understand what you're saying, that TCN is their job, just like the telcos have responsibility to their own asset.
Correct.
Where do you start? I know you're from the military, so force is important to you. But on this particular one, how much of technology can we deploy and what sort of technology? Because these things are available. Why are we behaving like this is rocket science? We can't even generate up to 10,000. And there are cities that are generating 40,000 and they don't have all this vandalism. So what are we not looking at?
Well, fantastic question, Jeffrey. You see, security in totality is a freedom from danger, freedom from loss. And the essence, the goal of security is to go after the loss, go before the loss. When you go after the loss, security has been defeated. And that is why we've been suffering attacks from most of these criminal elements because of the opportunity. Because when you look at the triangle of crime, 3 factors are responsible: a motivated offender, the opportunity, then the object itself. Now, most of these criminal elements, they are piercing through the opportunity. And what do? We need to cut off such criminal opportunity. That's where crime mapping analysis comes to play. Like my colleague rightly said, most times people don't listen. When an incident happened, for example, in Sokoto State, I think it's right time for the security guys in Kaduna State to say, hey, what lessons do we draw from the incident that transpired in Sokoto State? So here in our own country, we just go to bed whenever an incident happens, and we are okay waiting for the next strike. And this guy strikes again. We wait for the next strike. They keep on striking. So for me, I think the area of the northern area is a high-risk area, and the TCN, like I rightly talked about, are solely responsible in protecting their own facility, but with the aid of the federal government, because they don't have an armed wing or a military wing or a policing wing in their security design. They just need to feed the security agent with what they have come up with, because the security agent will not go and carry out crime mapping analysis for them, ascertain the threat level, the risk level of their own facility. So it is their own duty to say, hey, let's look at Zamfara, for example. It's a high-risk area, bandits everywhere. Is there possibility for an attack in our critical asset? If the answer is yes, okay, what do we do? That is where security management processes comes to play, because it's not all about the people. Security management has to do with the people, the processes, and the technology, like you rightly quoted there. The essence of technology. People think that sometimes technology is just for fashion. No, technology is to curtail crime in progress. If, for example, there's a crime in progress, like when the facility were blown off, it's a crime during the crime in progress. If there was an alert to the security agent to inform them, having carried out an area view to ascertain the crime in progress, inform them that there's a crime in progress, what then happened? The security guys go there and they catch these guys. But these 3 processes fail. The people factor fail, the processes fail, and the technological factor fail. So that tells you that we're not ready.
Let me take it to Mr. Ojukwu. Mr. Adeka, I'll come back to you at some point. It beats me, confuses me even sometimes. Let me give you an example. For instance, oil is our greatest cash cow. It accounts for over 70% of our foreign earnings. Mr. Ojukwu, this is for you. But we can't ramp up production. That is within our control. We can't control prices, but we can control production. We can't. We don't have enough power. And yet vandals are destroying the small one we have. I feel like there should be some level of, they've abused the word, maybe a state of emergency to make sure this is protected. Should we begin to think of what was adopted by the Yar'Adua government with the issue of Niger Delta to say some of these repentant terrorists, Boko Haram, should we repurpose them to begin to protect these things? Is that the way we should go? Because I'm just thinking of what can be done to stop this.
Yeah, thank you. There should be citizen involvement in policing, whether of normal access or such critical access as we do have, along transmission or even in oil. There's a duty for the National Orientation Agency to desensitize Nigerians from being unpatriotic. Some Nigerians are disloyal to this country. Some are hurting for one reason or the other. Government will reach out to them and bring out the hearts. We need to speak to their sentiments and to their emotions. And let them have an understanding that when Nigeria goes down, they go down even with their animosity or with their grievances. The government must also bring out the olive branch and make peace. The uncle you mentioned, Niger Delta militants, yes, they were hurting, they were gripped, one reason or the other, they were in the creeks and making life unbearable for the oil explorers, making life unbearable for Nigeria, and putting our name on this bad side of history, the bad side of the map of terrorism. Government reached out to them. There are also vandals even today, and there are vandals tomorrow. Government has to devise a means to be proactive. Reach out to those who may be hurting tomorrow, who are hurting today. Heal wounds. Never tell somebody cannot do anything. If he removes a knot, a bolt, he had done something, even to himself and to the rest of us. So I'm thinking about getting the citizens mobilized, remobilized, reoriented towards nationalism, towards national safety and security. The people must be involved. We need to reach out to the people, talk to them, to play along with everybody so that we can live in peace and in safety. Jackboot policing may not work because there will always be saboteurs. Let us reach out to them, appeal to them to be on the same page with the pace of development Nigeria wants to attain.
Mr. Ojukwu is talking about the carrot approach, but I'd like to look at accountability, and I'm going to piggyback on what you said earlier, Mr. Onikachi, that the TCN should guarantee security and take responsibility for security in its national assets. Yeah. But Mr. Osaje responded by saying that there's no military wing at the TCN, and we have the armed forces that defend our territorial integrity and has even intervened in issues of domestic security at home. So we should be asking questions of that department in the forces that should be taking responsibility of security. I imagine if, for instance, you know, at the villa, the people in charge of security abdicate, heads should roll. So who should we be asking questions of about the breach of security, continuing breach as it is, at our critical national assets? And we could also refer to the reports of takeover of the military training camp in Niger State, which the army has, you know, denied anyway, but we hope that it doesn't happen again. Mr. Onyekachi.
Yeah, so I'd like for us to compare apples with apples. That case of the military training camp has a national outlook to it. I would have to insist that this issue, in terms of accountability, I would love to see the House, not all these interesting things we see, set up an inquiry. The House should set up an inquiry into this matter. Invite TCN. We don't need to hear from the Minister of Power. Invite the TCN. We need to know who are the security consultants or enterprise risk consultants to the TCN.
What about the Minister of Defense?
I'm coming. We need to know the security company they are working with. Are they licensed? Are they even, do they know what they are doing? We need to know what reports they put before the government. Because for us to absolve the TCN, we need to see what they have done internally to ensure the protection of this line and show us where the government is failing on its part. Because people, we can't at every turn claim that the government has failed. The case Dixon was making the point is that you hear me talk about security as a program, not being a one-off. There's a system to security. I am the facility or the asset owner. I need government support on this end. I've run this program, I've run that program, but the government is failing to impute at this end. So that commission of inquiry will show us what the challenges are and who is failing at what. So do a commission of inquiry, invite the TCN to come. Let the TCN tell us that they wrote to the police did not give them men. Let the TCN be the one to tell us that they wrote to the military did not supply personnel. You will be surprised when an inquiry comes in. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because we do a lot of enterprise risk consulting and advisory to organizations. And I would always say that for you to know an organization that is serious with security, look at the organogram of that organization. So I want to see the organogram of the TCN. You talked about the oil supply. Why can't we ramp up supply? Production. You will be amazed the conversations that we are having in some of these organizations. I give an example. The IOCs should have no business whatsoever with pipelines in Nigeria because the locals have been proven to manage the pipelines better. Let me give an example. Maybe there's a TPP pipeline running somewhere, operated by Shell. Shell has so many things like voluntary principles, international considerations and everything. You know, you have policemen sitting, manning those pipelines, soldiers manning the pipelines, and they cannot shoot at sight. All right. So there are a number of issues, really, you know, that if we do not x-ray properly, bring the parties. The CP talked about stakeholder mapping. TCN is a stakeholder in this matter. Invite the TCN. Has anybody invited the head of TCN so far?
Let's bring it to Mr. Saji. So he's talking about, he really wants the company to be held accountable. What additional thing can be done? Let's move forward now. Because
I'd like to hear from them.
As you said, it's almost predictable. I know for a fact that the grid will collapse again. It's not a prophecy because we know the problem. It has not been resolved.
Is it a prayer point?
Yeah?
Is it a prayer point if not prophecy?
I'm saying the grid will collapse again. Quote me on it. Because the fixing has not been done. So we're just managing it. So we should not expect a miracle soon. It's almost predictable that vandals will strike again. What can we do to at least reduce it? That question is for you, Saji, and the CP as we
Fantastic question. I was able to, my company, I was able to train about 6,000 staffs of KEDCO between 2016 and 2019 in the area of vandalism. And I think the company did so well in training their staff in management of critical infrastructure. And one of the problems posed by most of the staffs of KEDCO was, abuse by most of these vandals and, lack of protection facility. You know, when you carry out protection strategy, don't make it easy for these criminals to get into your asset. That is why you need to allow them to labor in vain. That is what security is all about. Laboring in vain is that before they get into that asset, they must pass through some ring of protection. You know, for example, before I got in here, Jeffrey, the security here is very, very awesome. I passed through the gate, passed through somewhere, got in here, passed through almost 2 to 3 doors before I got in here. We call it security, it's defense in depth. So for me, I will advise the TCN to, invest more on training of their staffs and management and their security team, like Kachi rightly said, because they should be held accountable. What advice are they giving the security agent to protect their assets? So when they invest in training, then they'll be able to go before the laws. They'll be able to assess and forecast. You just forecasted a crime, a would-be crime. So let them carry out such forecast.
It's technical failure.
Yes, technical failure. Okay, technical failure, that means that is not a crime. Yeah. So for me, what has happened is not a technical failure. It is a crime against the Nigerian critical infrastructure. So the TCN has a lot to do. They should, call up their security director to give them brief and carry out a general assessment of all their facility and ascertain the porosity and the vulnerable areas so that they will project more security factors within that vulnerable areas.
CP?
Yes, thank you. I was tempted to say amen to your prayer, but I'm not going to prayer. I do know, of course, that the grid will collapse again. I saw in the records I collapsed over 105 times in the last 10 years. Yeah. So chances of collapse are there due to vandalism or due to inefficiency here and there.
Yeah.
But something has to be done to reduce, minimize vandalism of these trophy assets. One way to do it is, as we mentioned earlier, is about citizen involvement. Number two is about putting some measures, making the targets a little hardened by having areas to deter people from entering the place. Reduce the speed or the ease with which they can access these assets, climb the mast and bring everything down. How far can deny them access to that? In addition, if you have technology aiding the surveillance of these things, we'll be able to detect when this is about to be done, and if it's done, to be able to arrest the perpetrators immediately and take them to court. I've not seen where a vandal was taken to court, tried and convicted. We've seen a number of them who were electrocuted in the process, and we say good riddance to bad rubbish. But they'll repeat. Let somebody be properly prosecuted, sent to jail, because impunity keeps happening when those who are around fail to do what they ought to do to bring perpetrators to book. I think somebody should be in the jailhouse for doing that. And also, the TCM should be held accountable. They have a responsibility given to them by Nigeria to ensure transmission of generated electricity. We don't have enough generated, the one generated cannot be transmitted, and somebody is sitting down somewhere cozily. No. Somebody should be held to account for that.
Indeed. There are some operative words that I've taken from this conversation. Make them labor in vain, and of course invite the TCN.
TCN,
to answer questions on accountability.
We invite them.
So we must touch down at this point, and thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming through for us on this conversation. We've been speaking with Mr. Onyekachi Adekoya, security expert, and Mr. Dixon Osagie, security consultant. Both men joined us here in our Lagos studio. And, of course, retired CP Emmanuel Ojukwu. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And from here, we move on to Rivers State, where we look at the implications of that court order on the CBN to stop releasing allocation further to Rivers State government. We'll be right back after this time out. Join us again.
Welcome back to the program. Let's now talk about the intrigue of Rivers politics. Rivers State has been in news for the last 1 year, literally for the last 1 year. It's been one shade of crisis to the other. It's either the crisis on the street, in the House of Assembly, or in courts. Now, a different dimension has been taken as to how this fight is going. The latest being that yesterday, a judge gave an order now or a ruling saying that the central bank, the accountant general, and everybody involved in releasing allocation to the Rivers State government should stop doing so, premising on the fact that, look, that the House that passed that budget was not properly constituted. It was a House of 4. So a quick background, they had an issue in December last year where 26 members of the House of Assembly had defected to the APC. They made that declaration. Before they declared for the APC, they had suspended other members led by Edison Ehie, about 4 of them. So when they defected, it was a big issue. The governor, there were so many legal issues. So some lawyers were saying it's only 4 members are in the House. Others said it's been back and forth. But anyway, the governor presented the budget to the House of 4 led by Edison Ehie, 800 billion naira budget. And it was passed and signed and assented to. It became an appropriation act for the year 2024. Since then, there's been one issue or the other. Even presidential intervention could not solve it. And one of the provisions of the presidential intervention was represent the budget to the 26 members. Well, that has not happened. It's been cherry picking as to what to obey. Fubara to run his government. What can be done outside these battles of courts and all of these things to bring these gentlemen to the table to talk this out? Because it feels to us like the elders of Rivers State are not stepping up yet.
Well, I don't want to buy the notion that the elders of River State are not stepping up. It's just that the children of River State involved are not listening, and they are not willing to listen. And the onus is more on Wike and his group, because when you are an individual that nobody can talk to, that nobody can advise, for you to see reality and do the needful, then that individual is heading for a fall, And let's even address this issue of Fubara not being grateful. Who is more an ingrate between two of them? Wike, let me go down the memory lane. Wike was made by Odili special advisor. What is his position with Odili today? Odili is no longer an individual that matters. Wike was made chief of staff by Amechi. What is his position? What is his gratitude to Amechi? Amechi doesn't matter anymore. Wike was made Minister of State for Education by Jonathan and his wife. Does he speak to them today? No. Wike was made governor by this same couple, Jonathan and his wife. How grateful is he to them? And I can tell you, Asiwaju, president, wait for your turn, because he will do the same thing. When you find an individual who have a history of ingratitude, there's not going to be any exception. However, in direct answer to your question, what can be done? Everybody needs to be brought to the table. Dialogue will always produce results if the people involved, if the leaders of that dialogue are neutral. That's the issue. How can we find people that are totally neutral, objective, who can look Wike in the eyes and said, no, you're getting it wrong here. Look Fubara in the eye and said, Fubara, you are getting it wrong here. Two of you needs to sit down. And I think it was
Mr. Pele, before, my apologies, at the end of the day, both of them have their share of blame. I know perhaps you support Fubara on one hand.
No. I agree. Joe, it's not a question of who I support.
Okay.
Yes, I have my sympathy for, empathy for Fubara for what he's going through. And I want to also, for the sake of transparency, say that I am from the same place with Fubara, okay? How if the table turns and Wike is going through what Fubara is going through, I will stand up and defend him, irrespective of the fact that I'm from the same place with Fubara. Because, Joe, I hate injustice. I hate injustice. And today, Wike and his group is not being practicing injustice on just Fubara, but the entire people of River State. You did say, oh, we should focus on these two people. These two people are not bigger than the River State people. And it's the River State people that are suffering as a result of these two individuals, that their personal interest sometimes is over and above the people's interest. And this nonsense must stop. The president should call Wike to order. He is not a god to River State and can never be. And the truth be told, if he continues like this, he's giving the president the impression that, oh, he's in control of it. He is not. His powers has been taken from him. The so-called structures have been shattered. And he's just like an angry lion.
All right. So I'd like to follow up on what the bigger consequence of this would be, Mr. Pili, but let's expand the conversation now as Mr. Tonye Sipoto Pepple joins us. Mr. Sipoto Pepple is the lead counsel, Blue Crest Solicitors and Advocates. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program, sir. First of all, your initial reaction to this judgment before we begin to look at the implications of the strength of the judgment of the court.
Well, I would say good morning again to you and everyone out there listening to us. My initial reaction was that of shock, and I think I'll leave it at that. far from being diffident, it was basically shock.
All right, so amidst your shock now, let's look at the legal implications of it, to which some have said since 2022, I believe, when the NJC ruled that political matters would go to the High Court, the Federal High Court in Abuja. Do you see that that is part of the problem that is fueling the political crisis in Rivers State? Or should we also look at it objectively, that the High Court has a role to play in particularly bringing some form of sanity to the State Assembly legislation in Rivers State? Because some have asked that, how can a four-man assembly preside over the affairs of a state?
Yes, beyond just the High Court, I believe the judiciary should play a role in bringing some sanity to law and practice of our so-called nascent democracy, which to my mind is not so nascent. The NJC must have had some underlying reasons which are not completely very clear to me now, why they made that directive, or they gave that directive that political matters should be held in Abuja. But what readily will come to mind would be their concerns for security for the judges if peradventure those political cases were allowed to be adjudicated at the various places from where they arose. So that is what readily comes to mind. However, whether this decision is helpful and practical, given the political quagmire we find ourselves in Rivers State, is doubtful, because what it will do is starve the local governments of funds to operate within the purview of their own authority, not just the state government. And so it is the grassroots that ends up suffering. Whether or not the four-man assembly is the proper assembly, I'm not quite sure that was the question before the court. And I must put in a caveat here that, like I informed some of your colleagues earlier, I had not seen the enrolled, certified copy of this judgment, since it was something just given not too long ago.
All right, Mr. Pepper, I haven't seen the enrolled order or the CTC myself, so I try to refrain from speaking to things I can't speak authoritatively to, but it appears it's premised on around 120, 121 of the Constitution. But at the core of this, and I want you to interpret this legally from a very objective point of view, which is as to the status. The controversy here is the status of the lawmakers. The Fubara end is arguing that Amewula and his group are no longer lawmakers because they defected according to Section 109, subsection 1G. Amewula is saying we defected legally because there was a problem with the national secretary position who went to run for governorship in Imo State. Some are saying that division was not what you qualify as a division, so there was no premise to leave the party. So it was like grasping a straw, but they held back. And so we've had judgment upon judgment. They had suspended a year before they defected, and then when a year they came, four of them decided, and the governor presented that budget before them, and it was passed. So now it's a question of whether I may will them, those guys are still members of the House of Assembly, but we've seen all kinds of judgments. Some are saying, oh, present it to them, they are the ones that are members of the Assembly. Some are saying they are not. So where do we go from here legally? Because I want you to stick to legalese.
Okay, without being diffident again, some of these issues are issues I think are being dealt with to some extent by His Lordship, Chief Justice of Nigeria, who recently called or summoned rather the Chief Judge of Rivers State as well as the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court, and I believe also some other judges to address rather these conflicting judgments. So I will be careful in my comments regarding that issue, since His Lordship, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, is addressing those issues. However, my concern is that the courts must also be careful, or the judiciary must also be careful not to be drawn into the arena by the political class, because certain things are clear in the wordings of our Constitution. And by the very acts that we have observed in Rivers State, there are things that are also clear to the blind. You have made reference to some reason for why the larger number of the SY Rivers State Assembly defected. But we're also aware that they have, in some other fora, recanted on their defection. So we are at sea now on who actually to believe. If it is such that we go by what we saw on national TV, on social media, Amehule and other members of the House defecting, declaring that they had defected. They were even welcomed at a rally of the APC to APC. Then it stands to reason that these are no longer members of the House of Assembly. That the Section 109 takes effect. And therefore, it is for those members who remain members of the House of Assembly who have not defected to take the reins of the legislature and function, pending when INEC would deem it fit to conduct elections to fill the vacant seats.
See how that plays out.
Is what is clear.
We'll see how that plays out, particularly with reports that, this has been appealed already. But let's come to you now, Mr. Pele, for your last thoughts with the concern that this may have wider implications for not just rivers governance, but resource control there. Are you anticipating another round of militancy in 45 seconds?
No, I'm not. It will have very wide implications on the social life of the people, knowing fully well that they will be hard up. And so increase in poverty, increase in shortages of food item, and so on and so forth. The Rivers people are peaceful people. And as I look into this camera, I appeal to every youth in Rivers State, everyone, to please maintain law and order. Live and be at peace with people around you. We will win eventually.
Mr. Ajekepele, we must thank you so much for taking our time. I know you have a meeting in the next few minutes. Mr. Ajekepele is a policy and inclusive development analyst and also a stakeholder in Rivers State. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program. We also had joining us...
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Tonye Sipoto Pepo, Lead Counsel, Blue Crest Solicitors and Advocate. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program. Thank you, sir. Well, we will take a quick break. When we come back, that particular Nigerian movie that should be heading to the Oscars, hopefully, is what we'll talk about. The director and producer joins us just in a moment. Join us again.
jollof, and shrimp flavors at attractive prices of 100, 200, 500 naira, along with Saver and Super Saver packs.
Terra Cube, unwrap joy, unleash taste.
When a tanker bearing fuel falls or an underground pipe bearing fuel bursts, what do? Scooping fuel in your bucket or running far away from impending fire? You have a few seconds to take the wisest decision. Walk away? No, that is not enough. Shift? No, that is not enough. Stay there and gist and take shots with your phone? That is madness. Run. Yes, run away. Yes, your life depends on your action. The flames come suddenly, unexpected, but uncontrollable. Why? Fuel is highly inflammable. Why? It just requires a spark to set off a ravaging inferno. So, don't stay there to think. Storm away to live. Do not throw away your life in anguish for meaningless fuel siphoning. Be advised.
Are you enraptured in the magic of that film already, as I am? Well, stay with this conversation as we welcome Mr. Prince Daniel, who is a screenwriter and film director. Let's get right into the conversation. Mr. Daniel, many will be wondering, what is it about Mai'Martaba? First of all, pardon me. Good morning and welcome to the program. We're glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
It's a privilege.
Indeed it is, to have you as well on our show. What is it, when you wonder, what is it about Mai'Martaba, among so many other also amazing films, that have been released this year, that qualifies it to make it into the international feature film for the Oscars 2025? So talk to us about that.
All right. Thank you to Channels TV for having me. It's quite a privilege. And the same question I asked myself, why Mai'Martaba? Because we have, especially this year, very amazing films in Nigeria. But I leave that to the wisdom of the Nigeria Official Selection Committee. But we feel very, very excited and very humbled. We feel privileged that of all the good jobs in Nigeria, Mai'Martaba has been selected to contend for the Oscars in the IFF category. So yes, we're excited. Yes, we can explain. But of course, we put in a lot of work, as you can see, and it's been close to 3 years coming. We're happy, to be honest.
I can tell from your expression. But how fully representative of the movie industry is this National Selection Committee? Do they represent the interests of the generality of producers, directors, and all other stakeholders in Nollywood?
Yes, I can say yes, because the people in the NOSC are very seasoned filmmakers. So I have no doubt on their credibility as to representing the entire industry, which has also been demonstrated over the years with all the entries from Nigeria. They are men and women of integrity, as well as I can say. And this is not to say because we are in. However it played, we would accept it. In any case, we went in with 2 films, but one came out representing Nigeria. So I believe they do what they do in the best interest of the industry.
So, Prince, let's for clarity, is this proposed to be? Is this proposed to be like a film that should be at the Oscars, or is already one of the films that are nominated for the Oscars, so that people who don't understand how this thing works will be very clear?
Okay, how it works is that there are every other category in the Oscars for the films from the United States of America. And but there is one category called the IFF, which is for the rest of the world. So if you follow what the announcement, there are 85 films from outside the United States of America, and mostly language films. The 85 as published will be competing for a space in two categories. One, at the end of all at the moment are submissions from different countries.
Okay.
And every country is expected to have just a film. That sums up to make the 85 for this year. After which it will come down, sometimes in December, it will come down to 15. Then in January, it will come down to 5. So these 5 will go in as nominated films. So there is the submission from the countries, and then there is the nomination. So now from Nigeria, we are flying Nigeria's flag in the Oscars. From Africa, there are about 7 films. Kismet from Cameroon. There is another one from Tunisia. There's another one from Algeria. There's another film from Senegal. So we're all going in to compete with other people from other parts of the world. And we're optimistic that we will break the jinx of to go up to nomination. Nigeria has never had a nomination at the Oscars. We've had submission. The first one was rejected because the local language was less than 50%. That was Lionheart, Genevieve's Lionheart. And then Milkmaid by Desmond went into, but didn't make the cut for a nomination. And last year, Mai'Martaba, CJ Obasi's Mai'Martaba went in, but also didn't make a cut for the nomination. But for strange reasons, we feel very optimistic. We feel very confident to get up to the nomination stage.
Amazing, amazing. But on the other side, some people will say, why do we box ourselves in for foreign validation? Because you're saying 85 films that will trickle down to 15, and then eventually 5 just for one category. When the Americans have the entire category, what happens to our own, award system here in Africa? Maybe you can posit that whilst we are celebrating, and hopefully we'll celebrate the fact that Mai'Martaba will make it to the nomination level at the Oscars.
Yeah, so the Oscars is the Oscars, and that is what it is, just like the Grammys is the Grammys. And in a simple layman's explanation, it is like the Super Eagles going to the World Cup. And it is what it is for an athlete to go to the Olympics. So it's a bigger stage. It opens you up to tell your stories, to share your stories and ideas with a global audience. But that is not to negate our own industry. I can tell you for free, the 2 films we entered for consideration for the Oscars, which I produced and directed, are Kaka, which is on girls' child education, is also Hausa, and Mai'Martaba. And Kaka has already moved into different festivals. With the AMA nomination and the AFRIF selection, we've had like 29 selections across 5 countries. We won Best Nollywood Film in UK, Best Costume in the US, Best Nollywood Film in Canada for Kaka. So as we do our festivals, as we appreciate our festivals, it is also good that we go to the global scale, stage and play. And that way we will open the windows to investment into the creative industries. And I can give you an example with what China is doing by a benchmark survey conducted by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. It was a 15-year benchmark survey to ascertain the resilience of the creative industry in the world. And they found that was between 2002 and 2015. And they found something very interesting, that while the global average was 7%, China was growing at 14%, double digit. So they dug deeper and they found that what was China doing differently? They found that China had the largest export on creative goods and services. And that moved their creative goods and services revenue from $32 billion in 2002 to about $191.4 billion by 2014, not even up to 2015. So when you don't play in the global stage, you might just be shooting yourself on the foot. Like the Minister of Arts, Culture, Tourism and the Creative Economy has said, she's driving the industry to $100 billion by 2030. So you can't do that within the stream in our country. So as we play locally, as we appreciate Afri, as we appreciate AMA, as we appreciate Abuja International Film Festival, Cardiff, Bayelsa, and all the other festivals in Nigeria, we also have to be global players if we must drive in the creative economy revenue.
And you're corroborating the advocacy amongst, practitioners in the field for a powerful collaboration in a movie between Nollywood and Hollywood, where we'd see, a synergy of the abundance of talents that are abound in both industries. We must not miss an opportunity to speak to Mai'Martaba. It appears it's a return of the epics, and from what we have read, Mai'Martaba is a story setting an ancient Hausa kingdom. So tell us about it and some of the lessons that we can learn, from this story and its relevance to our times.
Yeah, so again, if we have to reposition or position the African film industry, we have to first appreciate that the future of African cinema are indigenous content. You could see that the biggest numbers on the streaming platforms are basically language films. And then if you go back to 1969, when Africa won its first Oscars with Z from Algeria, to 1976, when Ivory Coast then won with Black and White in Color, to 2006, when Tutsi from South Africa, is a film in Swahili, won. You then appreciate that there is the need for Nigeria to look inward again. Looking inward is, how do we cultivate our stories? How do we tell our stories in our language to share with the world? So what we did with Mai'Martaba is just following, going back to the basics.
All right.
And going back to the basics is, of course, simple. Let's be able to tell our own story in a language we best understand, as much as we subtitle it. So it took us back to an imaginary ancient kingdom called Jalaba.
All right.
And we went back to Daura to shoot for...
Release date, and streaming platform. We're totally out of time.
Oh, okay. So, well, for now, since we're in the Oscars, we'll pursue it. Release dates will come later. All right. But we want to beg Nigerians that at this point, it's not our film. It's Nigeria's entry. So we need everybody's support in any way. So
go, Mai'Martaba, bring us this nomination and indeed the win, and it will be celebrated. We want to thank you so much, Mr. Prince Daniel, for your time, and we appreciate your work in this amazing film that has made it into the Oscars for the category of International Film Festival. Thank you so much, Mr. Prince Daniel.
Thank you very much. I can say at this point, Nagudi.
Yes, indeed, Nagudi. All right, so that's how it's been on the show today. We'll be back again tomorrow with the home stretch. Thank you so much for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
Thank you for watching. Sunrise is up next at the top of the hour. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.